Well, our responsibility in this world, I think we can all say that we're privileged, regardless this group. To use Bill Clinton's words, we live in a world that is unstable, unequal, and unsustainable. And we have a huge responsibility, those of us who are here. We've heard the mothers have a responsibility, and I try to include the fathers also, because we all have a responsibility. But it's this generational role. We, as you said, we don't inherit the world, but we borrow it from the next generation or from our children. And there we see hope. If you read 10 years ago, you saw about Africa, to talk about your continent, that was a continent of no hope. Now, it's called the African lion. No longer the Asian tiger, but the African lion. There is an enormous growth in many countries in Africa. Foreign debt as percentage of GDP has gone down from 82%, which is a staggering amount, to 59%. Still a staggering amount, but 1/4 reduction. And almost half the population of Africa can define themselves as middle class, which is a surprising number. I know you smile when you hear that, a little cynically, because you don't see that growth. Should we start with you, Birikit? Do you see that enormous growth that we hear about, that we read about, especially Ethiopia growing by 2-digit numbers every year in their economy?
Yeah, we do. I don't want to go back to jail when I go back home, but I will try to be very diplomatic. For me, my challenge is I work with the community. I work with the grassroots community down there. And I live in the town. So when I take the taxi or the bus to my home, I see thousands of buildings, and I see, wow, this is looking great. And then after that, I go to the community and I see people that like 5 families living in one house, 10 families living in one house. So for me, it's a contradiction. Because we see a lot of development. I'm sure, has anyone been to Addis Ababa, to Ethiopia? Good, you. If you come, most people think it's one of the most growing cities, for example. It's growing, of course, but for the young people to feel it, some people feel it. I don't consider myself a middle class, because I see, for me, middle class is more than seeing that change. It's being part of that change. So if the young people and also the women in the ground level, at the grassroots level, are not involved, for me, I don't really believe that, and I don't support that idea. Maybe if you ask those people what a middle class is, I'm sure they have a different definition. Because for me, a middle class it's not about feeding yourself 3 times a day. It's about your voice. It's about participation. It's about decision making. So if you define it like that, and I'm sure most of the African youth may not feel like that.
This is a very important definition of what middle class is. Very important. Jimmy, you are working to educate the kids, the youth that would not otherwise have education. We met Ali here, who was from the poorest parts of Senegal, and now he's studying IT in Paris. It's a fantastic story, and he's not the only one.
No.
But are you also thinking of how to create this responsibility to take action and think about the next generation?
Yes, Jambar, it's all about that. It's all about giving them an education, giving them hope, and how to share our knowledge, but also our revenue, because we ask some players to come and help how to raise funds. I spoke about basketball. We're going to ask basketball players in US to help to raise funds, because what the key point is how to raise funds, but not only, it's also how to make sure that all the money will go directly where we need it. And transparency, it's the way to be sure that other countries will help as well. So we need to set up an environment to be sure that all the kids that we will take care of will have everything in terms of education, in terms of food and everything, to grow up in their environment, because we don't want them to leave their parents, their country, to come to Europe, we don't know where. The most important is to be sure that they will grow up in their own environment and in the best way.
Good. Erin, when you talk about your enthusiasm and activism as a young girl, and this is of course the way we want all youth to be. And we heard, I think it was on the Crown Princess panel, that it was said that it takes a village to raise a child. And so apparently you have had parents who were very actively including you in their concerns about future. But then we have some newspapers, TV stations, media sending all kinds of other signals to the youth. Is there something we can do about that? Is there, how can you as a youth group say something about we want something else? We don't want to look at all these stupid soaps.
It's an uphill battle, and the media is very pervasive today, and I think now you're getting it literally everywhere you are. It's on a screen, it's on a device, it's playing, it's blaring, and it's inescapable. So what do you know, as women, as men, these images that are completely unrealistic and completely unsustainable? Mentorship, I think, is a massive piece of that equation, just in terms of actually showing up. And there's so much that we can do digitally, but to actually foster and have a relationship with a kid and to go to them and to say, this is what can actually be, and that's a fantasy world, or that's, you know, don't even go down that road. How do you make it sexy? I think we're always, you know, talking about that. How do you make good, right, sustainable, just the way to go? How do you create a movement? You know, we heard from Jeremy, what's the tipping point? So in terms of, you know, when you're facing off against media that's also a multi-billion-dollar industry, and you're a small nonprofit or a person with a passion for a cause, it's challenging. But for me, when I walk into a classroom, the kids focus on me. And you look them in the eye, and you see something. And they see it back, and they see that you're honoring them, that you care enough to even be there. It's powerful.
Very interesting. Saji, who was here, I'm sure you are here in the audience also, Saji, comes from an organization called Search for Common Ground, that I learned now recently. They create cool reality shows with football. To create this, it's cool to take care. It's cool to show empathy and to take care of the community. Sigbjørn, Johnsen, you are I guess the three of us, we belong to the older generation, and there you have the younger generation. How can we, as the parent generation, how can we do a better job in preparing the next, or giving the next generation or the young generation a feeling that it isn't hopeless? That, I mean, we have done a lot of wrong things as a generation, not personally, but we should have taken action earlier. Now they have less time to take action. What can we do? How do you think we could do a better job?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that every child from birth carries with him or her a human, social, and educational capacity. And the main effort that we should do as parents and politicians is to make it possible for them to release that capacity. And of course, as fathers and mothers, we play an important role, and one of the best things we can do is to give our children the self-confidence to be, as you said, champions of their own lives. And then as a politician, we could put up the legal framework and put forward the formal rights that these people should have to release that capacity. And I'm not going to tell you my whole life story, but just a small portion of it. I've been active in politics for soon 50 years. Of course, when I enlisted in the labor youth in the late 1964, I was not a complete politician. I'm not a complete politician even today. But one of the first issues that we were putting on the agenda was the right for every youth in Norway to have a formal right to higher education. And that is an example on how we as politicians can contribute to release the capacities which are in every child. So I think that we can help them on their way, building self-confidence, encourage them to go on with their lives, and then as politicians put up the legal framework and use the tools that we have, which is the legal issues, the budget, and then finally I would also like to say that building strong communities is a joint venture. It's a joint venture of fathers and mothers. It's a joint venture of older and younger generation of politicians and what we might call ordinary people. So I think we can do a lot on ourselves. We can all make a difference in that respect, both as fathers and mothers and politicians or anywhere we are in society.
I guess that's what the partnership is all about, isn't it? But I'm old enough to remember when we started laughing as students when Norway found the oil in 69, 70 and 71. We dressed up as oil sheikhs when we went to parties just to make fool of all these stupid stories about Norway and oil. The sort of journey we have made as a country from being a fairly poor, well, I guess we couldn't say poor, but fairly down-to-earth country in the 60s and early 70s to where we are now as one of the richest countries in the world. There has been a transformation in the consumption in Norway, and it's getting close to what we would call conspicuous consumption. What can we do and this is not a political issue. I think it's a question of politeness towards the world. How can we as citizens sort of keep our feet back on the ground and not start this conspicuous consumption? And next question, how can we let other countries where there is now oil being found, how can we help them? Like, for example, Myanmar, where there is now lots of oil, they know there is a lot of resources outside the coastline. One issue is, of course, that you don't want to destroy the economy by this conspicuous consumption. And two, of course, although there is oil enough for decades, maybe centuries, and oil and gas in the world, there isn't room in the air to take all this CO2 emission. We cannot live with it. We have to do something. How can we, you have some strong opinions on that.
Well, as I said in my introductory, I think that any country, there is no law by nature that a country that is rich from natural resources should be able to manage them in a forward-looking way. There are a lot of historical examples on the opposite. But I think there is one very important issue one must address already from the start, and we did that in Norway early in the 70s. I was in Parliament at that time as well. We said these very magic words that these resources belong to the people. It doesn't belong to a specific class or a specific group of people. It belongs to the people because it's a natural resource that is the country's resource. And I think when you from the outset just declare this is the fact, you must look at ways and means how to manage this resource in a forward-looking manner. And that's why I also said earlier on today that it was very clear from the start that it was the Parliament who is the National Assembly, who acts on behalf of the people, elected by the people, that should manage this not only for one generation but for many generations to come, because it takes nature millions and millions of years to create these vast resources, and in a span of a generation we could deplete the oil wells and these resources, and it's not viable that we should spend it on just one generation. So the political main sentence is to say, well, this is the resources of the people, and they should be managed accordingly for not one generation, but for generations to come. We, in a way, my generation have borrowed. What we really are doing, we are replacing a natural resource with a financial resource in Norway, and this financial resource should live on for generations. So I think it's just to make this bold political view saying that these resources belong to the people.
And while we talk about natural resources like oil, you also talked about human resources. And Jimmy, you have focused on the human resources of Africa. And can you say a little about what your thinking is? How can you expand this? You have now shown that the Jambars concept, it works. It's economically sustainable. You can fund your school year by having 2 students going out to play football every year, and then you can fund 100 students for the next year, including boarding, including teachers, everything. What is your plan? How can you go about? You're going to expand this to baseball players. Do you have any plans for Africa in general?
Yes, we began in 2010 with South Africa. Now we're running for 3 years, and the first results will come in the next 2 years. We're already very proud of what we achieved in South Africa as well. I'm going to meet 3 different presidents of countries in Africa, Burundi, Gabon, and Ivory Coast in the next 3 months. What we need to do now is to explain our model. And just to give you an example, there's an advert from the HSBC Bank which said that the transfer of players from Brazil to abroad just brought $1 billion for the country.
This is money.
Yeah, that's a huge amount. And we know that in Africa we have a lot of very, very good talent. So we could do the same, always in the same, with the same philosophy, saying that it's not football that will develop a country. It's our youth, it's our people. So we have to give them the knowledge, which is very important because knowledge is power, and we need to teach them everything that they will need to make the country grow. So I really want to come back to this example of Norway, because in our country, in Africa, we don't think the same way. You know, we don't think that the resources belong to the country, and we have to change this mind. And this mind will change if we educate our child differently, saying that it's very important to think about the community. It's very important to think about the country, not only about ourselves.
Which is important. And then, Erin, while Jimmy is now working to help Jimmy and his team to help the education, and as you said, also understanding that the resources belong to the country, and I have to think about the whole country, you are sort of lifting it even further, and you say the resources belong to the whole planet, and we have to think of the future planet. How can you help Jambars get this message also through?
Well, I'm actually going to use an example from Africa. I lived in Ghana for 6 months. I was studying abroad in Accra. And when I got there, the first thing that caught my eye as an environmentalist always was there were plastic bags all over the ground. And I saw and I said, somebody has to be doing something about this. And this is, an outsider point of view coming in, aerial. And there was a man who'd started a company called Trashy Bags. And he was employing Ghanaians to go around. They'd picked up, at that point, over 10 million sachets. They're like pure water sachets. And he was employing Ghanaians using reclaimed rainwater, power of the sun to dry them and stitching them together and selling market bags, selling sports bag, cases, whatever it may be. And I said to him, I said, great, what's the education component? I said, okay. I'm going to run with that. And I went into schools, middle schools in Accra, and I started a recycling program, which consisted of me going and go, hey guys, so do any of you drink water? And they go, yeah. I said, okay, how do you drink water? They said, oh, it's pure water. So pure water. I said, what do you do when you're done? Silence. Well, toss it, it gets sort of intermittent responses. I said, you ever see them after that? And you see these wheels start to turn. And one kid went, yeah, well, they clogged the gutter outside my grandma's house and then it flooded. Somebody else goes, yeah, I was at the beach and my feet got caught in them. I go, was that good? And I go, no! And these kids would run out of the classroom and come in with armfuls of these sachets. What can we do? And that's the sort of perspective. I mean, that was just one example, but it doesn't matter who you're talking to or where or what the issue is, but when you broaden it out and you correlate these everyday choices that they're making, that young people are making, as simple as drinking water, to a global environmental impact. They're talking about seeing it in the oceans. That's that planetary view that these kids get, but you gotta make it tangible, because you talk to the kids about melting polar ice caps and it's either really depressing because the polar bears are dying, or it's just completely out of reach.
I think you're very right about making the understanding here and then, what does it mean for us? Because we should also, I think we've always thought about this during these 2 days, we should not come neither as a generation imposing things on the younger generation, nor should we as what we in Norwegian call Blenda White. We have a Norwegian detergent brand called Blenda, which is, so we use this as Blenda White when we have only white people in a room. We should not either come and tell any other country how they should behave. And I remember thinking that when we were talking about TV soaps, I was in a very poor family home. It wasn't a house, it was some walls in Addis Ababa, visiting a family. They had electricity, and the first thing they did was put the TV in, and they were watching American soaps. And I thought, this cannot be right, because if they create this image of this is how we live in the West. But then I told somebody about my reaction. I don't know if it was you, Rick, but I got the response that, well, these people have no hope, so don't give them at least something to dream of. But it's sort of a strange dream, because it's not our dream. But I think it's very important that we manage to make it local. We have to localize the global issues. So I don't know if you want to say something about that, Great.
Yeah, for me, localizing really works. But even when we say localize, we tend to, for example, me, I can't speak even for Ethiopia. I can only speak for the community I was raised in. So whenever we talk about youth empowerment, I think we tend to generalize. One of the issues that used to bother me was whenever we have, for example, even Ethiopians within Addis Ababa about youth, we talk about young people, we talk about them like, this is like the technology era, the tech youth. And I go down and I see this woman that has no idea about, no, not only Facebook, I'm not on Facebook also, but it's like, like we tend to generalize about localizing. I can't go to Kenya and say this is successful and no. So one of the things that like I really believe in is not generalizing about the young people, and even in a local context, because for me empowerment and working, like having a better use is about what we're talking in the morning about finding the inner self, the inner power, and that is very individual. And even local interventions should try to be individual, because there's no young people that have like the same passion that have, of course they may share passion, but they're never the same. So I also say we should be careful when we talk about local interventions, because we're all very different.
I think this is a very good finalizing line here. Thank you so much, all four of you. You all represent the champions of the world in your areas, all of you. I want to just finish by inviting you for the next year's work we're going to do. Sigbjørn Johnsen, you had a sentence where you said something about, if we cannot provide employment for the youth, what reason will they have to believe in the institutions of society? And this is one of the major issues for our next year. As you all know, 2014, we will celebrate our 200th anniversary for our constitution. All Europe will mark 100 years, I wouldn't call it anniversary, but it's 100 years since 1914, when the First World War started. And then we want to look at what do we celebrate from the Constitution? What can we learn? What did we do right and wrong over those years? What can we do better? And how can we avoid the same things that happened after the 1914 start of the war? How can we avoid the situation that we are almost in the middle of, or not only almost? Arnulf Øverland talked about Europa brenner, Europe is burning. We see the same fire going on. Europe is burning. We have an enormously huge amount of youth without employment and without even a hope for employment during their lifetime. What can we do about that? How can we help them, one, create jobs, of course, create more entrepreneurship, but also create a dignified life for those it isn't possible to create jobs for. And here we come in with sports, we come in with culture, we come in with finances, we come in with the hope and the energy that we can all create. So this will be the topic for next year, so please save the dates. We will come out with the dates as soon as, it might be the same dates as we have now, 15th, 16th of May. And with this, I think we will say thank you and look forward to the work that's going to be done the year to come, and wish all of you good luck. Thank you.